Good morning, guys. ये shift क्यों है मतलब like this side is completely empty. What has happened? Something has happened to this side. Okay, so Nidhi has a question, how many classes of ancient history left? So I think this will be our second last class. Yes. So all we are coming to an end now. I think we will have one more class. In today's class I'm going to continue my discussion on Gupta Empire because this is again a very important topic. And then our major topic after once I finish Gupta Empire, I will talk about a great king called Harshvardhan from Vardhan dynasty. So I will talk about Harshvardhan and his administration, and if time permits we'll also again shift back to southern India. We'll talk about Pallavas, Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas, all these important kingdoms. So now abhi tak jo themes hai, they are quite straightforward. I have talked about all the themes, they are quite straightforward. Now things will jumble up. More kingdoms, important kingdoms, because we have more recorded history. We have more sources to deconstruct history. So as we enter, so for example, in fact the period of Harshvardhan ruled till about 650 AD, till 647 AD in northern part of the country. He tried to win over south, but he could not. But so about after 650 AD, from 800 AD onwards, we will enter to what we call early medieval India. Right? So early medieval India I will talk about as part of ancient history class itself. So proper medieval India hai, that we will talk about. So for example, from 1000 AD onwards, the advent of Islam in India, that will be the major part of medieval history. But ancient history mein jo hai, hum Harshvardhan and these kingdoms like Pallavas, Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas, there is a very famous struggle which happened over Kannauj, this area of Kannauj which is right now in Uttar Pradesh. So 3 kingdoms fought over Kannauj. This is a very famous battle called tripartite struggle, Palas, Pratiharas and Rashtrakutas. So ye mera end point hoga. End point will be Imperial Cholas. So that will be the last topic. So in today's class I'm going to talk about, I will continue with my discussion on Gupta Empire. We're talking about Gupta Empire, the golden period of ancient India. Golden especially in the context of art and architecture. Not frankly that much of architecture. They were not great builders per se, but yes, they were great patron of art and literature. Right? So for example, why I'm saying that they were not great builders, because we have found some Gupta temples, but they are not grand temples. Maybe they were once, but whatever remain we have found, for example, there is a very famous temple at Devgarh in Uttar Pradesh, a Vishnu temple. They were worshippers of Vishnu. So these are not that grand temples. So when I use the word golden period, it mainly means art and literature, and it also can mean literally that Guptas issued the largest number of gold coins. Not as pure as Kushanas, but definitely the largest number of gold coins. So in last class I talked about the emergence of Gupta Empire. I talked about important kings and their contribution to the empire. Right? So for example, we specially focused on Chandragupta I, Samudragupta, Napoleon of India, called Napoleon of India, and Chandragupta II, who took the title of Vikramaditya. Where we also talked about the decline of empire, right? I also told you in the last class that 2 aspects, that is science and technology and literature. Without this, Gupta Empire as a topic will not be completed. So that will be discussed in art and culture classes. But here I should focus upon the administration, economy and society part. Like what was the administration like? What was the society like during Gupta? Because we have a lot of idea about it. And what was society like, administration, what was economy like, right? So let's answer all this question one by one. So for example, if I have talked about society, because social history is a very important theme. In general, UPSC का भी एक बड़ा favorite topic होता है. So few things we find. For example, Guptas, they, as we already have discussed, they may have been Vaishya, but they patronized a lot of Brahmins, so Brahmins became very important, and because of this patronage, they often got this this title of even greater ruler than Kshatriyas. And so Gupta's jo rulers hain, they were declared as the representative of gods on earth by Brahmins, and because of that, many important lands were given to Brahmins, which were declared as tax-free, no tax. In fact, this was not started by Gupta. This was started by who? Satavahanas, right? So Satavahanas started this. So Gupta continues this, and this was later continued in southern part of India. Pallavas continued it, Chalukyas did the same thing. We will talk about that. So this land grant to Brahmins, and these land grants, they were often declared tax-free, right? Not only tax-free, in fact, majority of land where Brahmins were given these lands, they had their own set of rules and regulations also. So for example, a lot of time if people are committing mistakes in this area, then often these Brahmins punished them rather than some sort of royal punishment or punishment by some royal officer. That also did not happen. So anyways, society, if I have to talk about the social differentiation per se, the Varna system is still very important, but the position of Shudras improved. So Shudras, while in the earlier period were seen as like at the service of the upper three Varnas, now we have evidences that Shudras had some land of their own and they became farmers. So for the first time we get to know during the Gupta period, especially the late Gupta period, that Shudras emerged as agriculturalists, as farmers. However, there is another class which is in fact considered out of the Varna system, is called Chandals. So, and we know about Chandals from the writings of Fahian. I was talking about Fahian in the last class. So Fahian, when he went to cities, he found out that lot of people who live outside the cities, and they were often involved in jobs which were looked down upon. For example, they were butchers, meat shoppers, traders. And whenever they entered into the city, they took a stick with them so that they can announce their presence and other people will not come in, they can change their path because Chandalas are crossing to this area. So, ये जो Chandalas है, इस पे लेके बहुत सारा theory है. So, for example, they are called Panch Varnas, the fifth Varna. But at the same time, they are also called outside the Varna system. They are the untouchables, who should not be touched. And not only this, there is another theory that a lot of people, so especially I was talking about in last class that Manusmriti talks about different types of marriages. Which marriages are allowed, which marriages are not allowed. Ashur marriage, Rakshas marriage, these are not allowed. So for example, one of the marriages which was not allowed by Manusmriti was when a Brahman woman marries to a Shudra man. So the children of a Brahman woman and Shudra woman, they will be called Chandalas. They became Chandalas. So there are many, so Chandalas, exactly who are Chandalas and what is their origin, that is very difficult thing to pinpoint or very difficult thing to answer, but we do know that they were often involved in those jobs which were looked down upon, jobs of butchers, meat traders, etc. And we do know that whenever they entered to the town, they had to announce their presence by using a stick. They use this stick and they created a sound so that people in this area will subside. So even though the position of Shudras improves, Chandalas, their position, and especially the fifth Varna, emergence of fifth Varna, that became very important. Another very interesting thing happened with the conquest of Samudragupta, that abhi tak hum baat kar rahe the Varna system ki. Now proliferation of caste happened in the society. Many castes emerged. And there is a theory that how this caste system emerged. It may be much more complex social phenomena. I have already told you that history को हम बहुत ही simplistic terms में analyze करते हैं. Frankly, because we do not have enough resources, and frankly, it also suits us. But this phenomena of emergence of various castes must have occurred, much more complex phenomena. But जो central idea है that it happened two ways. Lot of foreigners had settled into India, and lot of new tribes became integrated to larger Hindu society. Hindu again, not as a word, Hindu as a religion. This is also very important. Hinduism as a religion was not established religion per se. Hindu as a term was coined for people who lived west of Indus River, right? वहां से इंडिया और हिंदू दोनों वहीं से आता है कि इंडस रिवर एंड अरबिक में जो हॉ हम यूज करते हैं वहां से हिंदू आता है. So anyways, the larger, I will use the word larger part of, say for example, Aryans. So many new tribes were integrated to larger part of Aryan fold. Now this happened via two mechanisms. People who were foreigners, who were warrior class, who were the richers, they were accepted to the society, they were given the higher status. इसका एक जैसे सबसे बढ़िया example है, I was talking about Huns in the last class. Lot of conflict happened where Guptas, as well as I was talking about Yashodharman, who fought Yashodharman of Malwa, who fought Mihirkul and defeated him. But lot of Huns also were integrated to Indian society, and lot of Huns actually were given because they belonged to warrior class, they were warriors. They often became Kshatriyas. So as per R.S. Sharma, for example, I was not able to find this because R.S. Sharma tells you that many Rajputs still have this title Hun. Because ये जो Huns हैं, जैसे Rajput, there are many clans of Rajputs. I will talk about Rajputs a lot in medieval history. जब हम medieval history पढ़ेंगे, जैसे origin of Rajputs है, वो भी एक बड़ा एक important debatable चीज है. That Rajputs, who were Rajputs actually? So there are many clans of Rajputs, more than 30 clans, about 36 clans of Rajput. One of the clans of Rajput are Hunas. So the process happened in two ways. Many foreigners, the warrior classes, they were integrated as Kshatriyas, right? But people who, even among foreigners, who are not, who are say for example, the worker class, they were integrated into different sections. Second thing, when new tribes became part of this Aryan fold, all these different tribes became different caste. And this system of caste in fact even continues today. So any time new caste became part of this larger Aryan fold, it became a new caste. However, the tribal chiefs often were given the good status in the society, but the same did not happen in case of local, normal people, worker class of even different tribes. So ये एक important, बहुत important development है. Another very important development in society is the religion itself. Now this is very interesting. So religion में Buddhism had already declined. I have talked about this. Right? Buddhism had already declined. जो Mahayana Buddhism है, that had already declined. A new form of religion which is called Bhagavatism or Vaishnavism emerged. Vaishnavism became the most important religion. Vishnu became the most important God. But here is the interesting thing. Vishnu, as a Vishnu, when we worship in today, so for example, Vishnu even today is called the protector. This concept of Trinity of gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Brahma as the originator of the universe, Vishnu as the who is taking care of stuff, and Rudra or Shiva who is considered to be destroyer. तो ये जो Trinity of gods है, ये बड़ा ही एक interesting concept है जिसके बहुत similarity है. जैसे for example, even in Christianity, you find the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, right? तो ये जो Trinity of Gods का concept है, ये काफी similar themes बहुत सारे mythology में मिल जाएगा. So that happened as part of Vedic religion also, right? So यहाँ पे Bhagavatism became the most important religion, which is also called Vaishnavism. But two developments happened here. Vishnu as a god was integrated with another tribal god who is Narayan, a very important tribe who worshipped Narayan, and the follower of Narayan were called Bhagavats, right? So Narayan was integrated with Vishnu, and another god called Krishna, who is the god of Vrishni tribe, and Vrishni in fact is a Vedic tribe, a Vedic clan. Their most important god is Krishna. So these three gods became one god which emerged as the supreme Vishnu who is taking care of this entire universe. Narayan, Vishnu, who already is a god in early Vedic period but not an important god. Vishnu is a minor god. But now Vishnu was integrated with Narayan and Krishna, and these three gods became one which we now know as many forms. And not only this concept of 10 avatars of Vishnu, that this entire universe it occurs in phases with 10 avatars, 10 reincarnations of Vishnu, that also became very popular. So सबसे famous वहाँ पे जो है विष्णु पुराण जो है, that tells you a lot of story about Vishnu Puran which was written during Gupta period. तो ये एक बड़ा important religious development है, that Bhagavatism as a important religion that emerged. ठीक है. About economy, if I talk about economy during Gupta period, so Gupta were more interested in so for example, one of the major source of their revenue was tax on land, tax on agriculture. However, the tax on business decreased, maybe because of the origin of Guptas themselves. They did not do large scale trade with foreign nations, but जो inland trade है वो काफी developed था, काफी popular था. Trade often happened in coinage system. So for example, जो coinage system है that was well developed. We already have talked about Guptas were the largest issuer of gold coins. Gold coins were called dinaras. ये dinar जो word है आपको बहुत जगह मिल जाएगा, right? As a currency जो है, जैसे अभी even today in few countries you will find dinar as a currency. The gold coins were called dinaras at this point of time. Tax on trade was less compared to tax on land. This is a very, very important economic development which you should know. ठीक है, so just write down few things. Give this heading Administration of Gupta Empire. Administration of Gupta Empire. Vijayanagar we will study in medieval history. Nikunj has a question. हाँ जी बिल्कुल बोल सकते हैं. Amit Sharma is saying that can we call feudalism began in India by Guptas? That is हाँ ठीक है. This is also very interesting because someone has pointed it out. Feudalism as a system. Someone can explain what is feudalism per se? Right, so landed class. Landed, so for example, feudalism as a well-developed system, when जब हम पढ़ते हैं तो medieval Europe हमारे दिमाग में आता है. In medieval Europe, feudalism developed as the main economic system. So feudalism में क्या होगा कि there is a king, but at the same time there are many feudal lords, and these feudal lords had their own private land, and they often employed tens and hundreds of people on this private land, right? And they were given some salary, not necessarily though. Lot of these people in fact lived in this private land of feudal lords. Feudal lord का फिर role क्या होता था कि feudal lord needed to maintain some sort of small army, as well as they needed to give tax to the king, right? So whenever, say for example, there is a conflict, feudal lords had to contribute by their army. Now this again was, I will not say that feudalism was a well developed system during Gupta's period, but yes, it did happen during Gupta's period. जैसे हमने last class में हमने decline of Gupta period पढ़ा था, तो उसमें मैंने एक point लिखाया था rise of feudatories. A lot of feudal lords became very powerful because they gained access to more and more private land. They had their own private army, and they started rebelling against this centralized empire, right? So yes, we can say that feudalism as a system, not as a well-developed system, but it does start during Gupta period, and it continued by Harsha. So we will talk about Harshvardhan in today's class. तो वहाँ पे हम इसको डिटेल में करेंगे. Anyways, write down few things here. Administration of Gupta Empire. The empire was divided into provinces. The empire was divided into provinces which were called bhuktis. Just a second. Provinces called bhuktis. These bhuktis were under the charge of uparikas. Were under the charge of uparikas. Bhuktis were divided into, write down next bullet point, bhuktis were divided into districts called Vishayas. Vishay. Bhuktis were divided into districts called Vishayas under the charge of Vishyapati. Under the charge of Vishyapati. And last point ek likh lena, Vishayas were divided into Vithis. Vishayas were divided into Vithis, which comprised of many villages. Many villages. So, if I have to say, for example, talk about the unit of administration, then Bhuktis, Vishayas, Vithis and then villages. अगर हम unit of administration की बात करें, तो top पे फिर empire will be divided into Bhuktis, Bhuktis will be divided into Vishayas, Vishayas will be divided into Vithis and then villages, right? हम ऐसे लिख सकते हैं. Write down next bullet point. More tax on land was collected while the tax on trade and commerce was less. While the tax on trade and commerce was less. Write down next bullet point. Villagers were subjected to forced labor. Villagers were subjected to forced labor called Vishti. Forced labor called Vishti. Important word. ये जो words हैं, these are important. Somehow UPSC is fascinated with these words. तो prelims में ऐसे I will keep repeating this. In fact, what I'm planning to do, I will compile all these words, especially given in R.S. Sharma, and I will get it uploaded once this ancient history class is over, right? That I think that will be helpful. But I should also tell you, this list of words which I will get it uploaded will not be exhaustive, because मैंने पिछले क्लास में बताया था कि ये कहीं से भी पिक कर लेते हैं, कोई भी बुक से पिक कर लेंगे. तो but I will again repeat. इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि हमको बहुत सारे बुक्स पढ़ने हैं. तो जितना आर्य शर्मा में दे रखा है उस पे खाली फोकस कर लो, वो मोर देन सफिशिएंट है. सो द आइडिया ऑफ विस्तीज वेयर, फॉर एग्जांपल, लॉट ऑफ लैंड, जस्ट एक लाइन सुन लो पहले, लॉट ऑफ लैंड विच वाज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर, इट बिकेम पार्ट ऑफ agriculture, and often villagers were forced to do work on this land so that these lands also became fertile, right? So these are called vishtis. अच्छा, एक बहुत important theme है is this concept called guilds or shrenis. Give this, इसी में एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में ही एक मेन हेडिंग देना, श्रेणीज. गिल्ड का कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर है. सो गिल्ड जनरली क्या होता है कि पीपल ऑफ पर्टिकुलर प्रोफेशन हैड देयर ओन एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सेटअप. These are called guilds. So for example, merchants, traders, bankers, weavers, everyone, all these professions will have their own separate guild. They lived in a certain part of the city. Now, this guild system is not unique to Gupta Empire. This guild system existed in India even during Mauryan period. This guild system has been talked about Manusmriti, right? That traders have their own. So for example, अभी जैसे corporate associations होते हैं, lobbies होते हैं, business lobbies होते हैं. Oil groups will talk to government as one lobby, right? फार्मा लॉबी होगा, ऑयल लॉबी होगा, ऐसे डिफरेंट ऑटोमोबाइल लॉबी होगी. तो अभी जैसे लॉबी होता है, सो लेट्स नॉट यूज द वर्ड लॉबिंग हियर. अ वेरी यूनिक एंड इनोवेटिव सिस्टम एग्जिस्टेड इन एंशिएंट इंडिया, which was well developed during Gupta's period. However, I should also again I should repeat, it was not started during Gupta period. The guild system existed even before Gupta period, where different type of merchants, different type of traders, different type of professions, they set up their own body, some sort of corporate body, And the most interesting thing is that these bodies had their own set of rules and regulations. So for example, if people belonging to this group committed a crime, they were punished by their own set of rules and regulations. So even though they were part of the empire, but this uniqueness is that they had their own system of customs, their own sets of rules and regulations. And the most interesting thing is that the evidence of these guilds are found in all major cities. For example, it is found in Vaishali also, it is found in Patliputra also, it is found in Bangladesh also. Right? So in many parts of the country we find this evidence of guild system, which are called, at that point of time they were called Shrenis. Right? So just give this heading, Shrenis. These were association of traders, merchants and artisans, Write down next bullet point. System of guilds began in early Buddhist period. System of guilds began in early Buddhist period. And continued during Mauryan period also. A separate Shreni, write down next bullet point, a separate Shreni existed for a particular group of persons. A separate Shreni existed for a particular group of persons engaged in the same vocation or activity. Engaged in the same vocation or activity. Write down next bullet point. Guilds of artisans, merchants and others. Guilds of artisans, merchants and others were governed by their own law. They also enjoyed certain immunities. Next bullet point, abhi we are discussing about administration only. Next bullet point mein likhna, we find, this is separate from Shreni, this is the next bullet. We find evidences of feudalism. In Gupta administration. For example, the empire was, major part of the empire was, sorry, एक word add कर लेना, major part of the empire was held by feudatory chiefs. held by feudatory chiefs who paid tribute to the king, who paid tribute to the king. Next bullet point में लिखना fiscal and administrative concessions, fiscal and administrative concessions were given to priests and administrators, were given to priests and administrators. Some higher officials, write down next bullet point, इसी में we're talking about feudalism. Some higher officials were also given land grants. Were also given land grants. However, most of the officials were paid in cash. Most of the officials were paid in cash. So, feudalism as a system was introduced. I will repeat, not a well-developed feudal system, but yes, definitely we do find some elements of feudalism during Gupta administration. Right on next bullet point. There was clear demarcation of civil and criminal law. There was clear demarcation of civil and criminal law. Criminal law. इसी में एक लास्ट पॉइंट लिख लेना. The bureaucracy of Gupta Empire. The bureaucracy of Gupta Empire was not as developed as Mauryans. Was not as developed as Mauryans. And there is a reason for it, right? So for example, we can easily understand it. While Mauryan administration was much more centralized, here we have many feudal chiefs. These feudal chiefs are responsible for administration in different part of the country, right? So in Mauryan Empire, more focus on bureaucracy. Here, more focus on feudal chiefs. So that's why bureaucracy was more developed. However, judicial system was more developed during Gupta's period. We will talk about Mauryas versus Guptas as a one small theme, but give the next heading, economy. Economy. Write down just in few bullet points. Gupta issued the largest number of gold coins called dinaras. Guptas issued the largest number of gold coins called dinaras. These coins portray the king's love, portray the king's love for both war and art. For both war and art. Silver coins were also issued. Silver coins were also issued. Silver coins were also issued. However, very few copper coins were issued. Very few copper coins were issued. And एक last point लिख लेना. There was decline in long distance trade. There was decline in long distance trade. However, trade within the empire was flourishing. Trade within the empire was flourishing. इसका भी तो कोई कारण है why the long distance trade declined, because at this point of time the most important another empire is Roman Empire, right? So the Silk Route, which was prospering during Kushanas, what happened is that by this point of time Romans also had learned the art of developing silks. Silk Route there was a reason why it was called Silk Route, because silk was in the highest demand as part of Roman Empire. So Romans had learned this art of growing silk of their own. So a lot of silk weavers of India in fact had to change their profession because pura demand khatam ho gaya, right? Give the next heading, society. Society. Caste proliferated into many subcastes. Write down. Caste proliferated into many subcastes. This mainly occurred via two mechanisms. First, every new tribe which became part of the larger Aryan fold, was given a new caste, or became a new caste, ऐसे लिख लो, became a new caste. Second, many foreigners who settled in India also became new caste. Write down next bullet point. The position of Shudras improved in this period. They were represented as farmers. Write down next bullet point. The number of Chandals increased who often lived outside the cities and dealt in meat and flesh. flesh. Their condition was deplorable. Their condition was deplorable. And whenever they entered a town, whenever they entered the town, they strike a piece of wood. They strike a piece of wood to announce their arrival. To announce their arrival. मैं ना बिहार से हूँ, right? I have told you before. तो आई एम वेरी श्योर ऑल ऑफ यू नो कि बिहार में जो कास्ट पॉलिटिक्स है वो बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है, राइट? आई रिमेंबर एज अ ग्रोइंग अप, मेरे कुछ ऐसे होंगे aunts and uncles, they used to feel very proud that how people of lower caste used to salute us. Now things are changing, and then I feel good that things are changing. You guys should I don't know, मतलब ये जो एक some sort of superiority है just because you belong to, I don't know, some upper caste who you had no control over, that it doesn't make sense. And it things which occurred hundreds of years ago, and even it continues today, right? In many parts of the country it even continues today, which is utterly stupid. Anyways, write down. Chandals were often considered outside the Varna system. Chandals were often considered outside the Varna system. They were untouchables. They were untouchables. Right on, next bullet point. Again, position of woman is very important. What we witness today, not today, but at least just after independence, that also happened during Gupta's period. So while women who belonged to Vaishya and Shudra Varnas, they were allowed to go outside and work, they had this access to livelihood. But same was not given to women who belonged to higher Varnas, right? So this idea of woman as a property of man, this idea of polygamy, all these things became much more stronger during Gupta's period, right? Society mein, and this is again, this is very interesting, and by the way this continued, even today it continues. अब तो चलो फिर भी लोग शायद aware हो रहे because of more opportunities, perhaps because of more education, that people want women to do work. However, अब क्या है कि अब एक dual burden का concept है कि घर का भी काम करो, बाहर का भी काम करो. The women who are also working, they are supposed to do household chores also, and work also, and earn also, right? So ये ठीक है. You'll discuss, you'll study about this as part of your sociology of your Indian society classes. But this, ये तो चलो अभी फिर भी है, which is dual burden is also quite bad. But पहले ऐसे था, and this again has continued for hundreds of years, that women were not supposed to work. Somehow, this idea of woman as prestige of house, if they go outside for work, somehow it dilutes the prestige of a house, especially those houses which claimed themselves to be of upper classes. This idea it became very popular during Gupta period. So just write it down. While women of lower classes were free to earn their livelihood, same did not happen to women of upper classes. First examples of sati first examples of sati, immolation of widows, is also found during Gupta period. However, many textbooks written during this period allowed remarriage of widows. So sati as a practice was not prevalent per se, but we do find evidences of sati during Gupta period. So sati, of course, it became a much more prevalent practice in later times of ancient as well as medieval India. It continued even when Britishers arrived in India. We'll discuss about this in modern history classes and society again in detail. But at the same time, there is a conflict. There are textbooks, for example, there is a very famous textbook written on inheritance law by Katyayan. Katyayan talks about this concept of Stridhan. Stridhan is basically gifts which a woman gets during her marriage from both her parents as well as from her in-laws. So a lot of jewelries. He also talks about, Katyayan also talks about in his book that women are allowed to mortgage this property if there is some sort of financial distress. So it tells you that women had some access to property. It's not like that they had zero access. They had some access to property. But this idea of woman at the service of men, that became stronger and stronger in the society, and it continued for next few hundred years in the society. Another very interesting thing is this concept called niyog. There is a very famous term called niyog. The idea of niyog is that if a person dies, then the younger brother can marry the widow. That is the idea of niyog. In fact, it does not have to be marriage also. Even for, say, for example, for offspring, which will, say, for example, continue the generation. That was also allowed. For example, if you have read Mahabharat, right? In Mahabharat, जब हम पढ़ते हैं कि when Bhishma had taken this vow that he is not going to marry, right? His name was Devvrat. Those who have studied Mahabharata, I'm very sure you'll remember this. So when the Bhishma's stepbrother, his name was, I'm forgetting, what was his name? Chitrangad? I'm talking about the sons of I think Chitrangad, his name was Chitrangad. So when he dies, he had two wives and with no progeny, with no successor. So first Bhishma was asked that can he give successor, and Bhishma refuses because he has taken the vow of celibacy. Then Vyas is called, Vyas, who is considered to be the author of Mahabharata. Vyas is called, and from Vyas, three sons, Dhritarashtra, Pandu as well as Vidur, who is the chief minister of Kaurava Empire, right? So this is the idea of niyog. Or for example, think about Kunti also, right? So Pandu was cursed that he cannot have offspring, otherwise he will die. So Kunti had this, as part of Mahabharata, Kunti could call gods, and these gods bestowed sons to Kunti, Yudhishthir, Bhim, Arjun, as well as Madri, Kunti's, so Pandu's other wife, right, Nakul and Sahadev. So this is the idea of niyog, that even if a person dies, the younger brother could marry, or at least younger brother can produce offspring, so to continue the generation. Now this idea of niyog was very much prevalent in the earlier period, in Vedic period, but this also stopped during Gupta's period. तो आप ये लिख सकते हो, नियोग Vichitravirya, thank you, Ravikant. His name was not Vichitravirya. It was not, Chitrangad was his elder brother. Yes, thank you. Niyog, which was allowed earlier in the Vedic period, Niyog, which was allowed earlier in Vedic period, was not allowed during Gupta period. Was not allowed during Gupta period. As part of Niyog, younger brother could marry the wife of older brother, in the eventuality of death of later. Eventuality of death of later. And एक last लिख लेना, religion. Vaishnavism, write down, Vaishnavism bullet points में, which is also called Bhagavatism. Vaishnavism emerged as the most important religion with Vishnu as the main god. It believed in bhakti and non-violence. It believed in bhakti and non-violence. Which attracted foreigners and many tribes. History was presented as a cycle of 10 incarnations of Vishnu. Avataras, basically 10 incarnations of Vishnu. Along with Vishnu, Brahma and Shiva emerged as the main gods. Idol worship in temples. Idol worships in temple became a common phenomena. Even though patronage to Buddhism declined, write down, even though patronage to Buddhism declined, some stupas and viharas were constructed. Also Nalanda University, the construction of Nalanda University started. during Gupta's period? Gupta period. There is no doubt, right? No, don't write it. There is no doubt in this thing that this impact of Gupta's empire on Indian society is perhaps the most important impact across all the kingdoms which we have seen. And not only in northern part of the country, even in southern part of the India. For example, the conquest of Samudragupta, even though Samudragupta did not rule all these regions directly, he had feudal chiefs, or for example, kings paid patronage to him, kings paid tributes to him. So, but this idea of, so especially जो society और cultural जो impact है, society, religion, culture में जो impact है, that impact because of Gupta's empire perhaps is the most important one, which we still see in contemporary society, right? Anyways, एक last theme एक लिख लेना, Mauryas versus Guptas, because these are the two largest empires of ancient India. Often there is a comparison between two. I'm not going to talk about things like time period and all. Matlab, yeah, I'm very sure all of you know. Mauryan Empire before Christ period, Gupta Empire after Christ period. But write down in bullet points. The Mauryan Empire, Mauryan Empire was much more vast, than Gupta Empire. Gupta Empire. Write down next bullet point. Mauryans followed a centralized administration. Mauryan followed a highly centralized administration. Mauryan followed a highly centralized administration. Whereas elements of decentralization is found in Gupta Empire. Next bullet point. इसी का in fact a consequence होगा. Mauryan bureaucracy was much more elaborate than Gupta's. Mauryan bureaucracy was much more elaborate than Gupta's. Judicial system, next bullet point, the judicial system of Gupta was more developed. Judicial system of Gupta was more developed with clear demarcation of civil and criminal law. With clear demarcation of civil and criminal law. Clear demarcation of civil and criminal law. The tax system of Mauryan dynasty was more stringent. The tax system of Mauryan dynasty was more stringent, whereas Gupta's rulers favored a liberal taxation system. Whereas Gupta rulers favored liberal taxation system. Mauryan rulers, especially Ashoka, promoted Buddhism, whereas whereas Gupta rulers promoted Hinduism, Mauryan rulers built great structures, whereas science, literature and astronomy flourished during Gupta's empire. External trade and commerce flourished during Mauryan dynasty. External trade and commerce flourished during Mauryan dynasty. While it declined in Gupta period. And एक last point लिख लेना. Mauryan Empire declined because of weak rulers and internal strife while Gupta Empire mainly declined because of external invasions. External invasions. ये एक बहुत important theme. I'm not going to make you write this, but this is a very important theme. Vaktak Empire. ये जो Vaktakas I was talking about in the last class also, right? The daughter of Chandragupta II was married to a Vakta king, right, who died, and Prabhavati Devi became the de facto ruler, and she actually promoted the goals of Gupta's empire. And because of this, I will not say control, but because of this alliance between Vaktakas and Guptas, यहाँ पे जो satraps थे, western satraps, Sakas, they were finally defeated. Right? So this played a very, very important role. ये जो alliance है, this played a very important role in defeating Sakas. So Vaktaks themselves were Brahmins. Maybe they were feudatories, they were perhaps feudatories of Satvahanas. ये जो region है, कौन सा region है? This region was ruled by Satvahanas, right? After decline of Kanva, Maurya, Shunga, Kanva, right? So this was ruled by Satvahanas. Maybe Vaktakas were one of the feudatories of Satvahanas. We do not know the origin of Vaktakas, but maybe they were feudatories of Satvahanas because there are many similarities. Vaktakas also claimed themselves to be Brahman rulers. They were not Kshatriyas, they were Brahman rulers. They promoted Brahmanism, right? And the alliance between Gupta and Vaktaka, that was a very, very powerful alliance. In fact, Vaktaka Empire predates Gupta Empire. The empire declined after Gupta Empire. Anyways, so I'm not going to make you write anything, but ye yaad rakhna as a theme, this is very important. I have many, there is a very good source I was able to find. There is an amateur historian who has compiled this map of political history from ancient and medieval times. So I have actually all these maps, I will get it uploaded. If you are just interested, हाँ जी, ये जो maps हैं, these maps will basically tell you how things developed as part of different time period, right? So I will get this map uploaded today itself so that you will have some idea, like you can correlate things, that what is happening in different part of the country. I should also tell you that these maps are compiled by an amateur historian. यहाँ पे margin of error मिलेगा आपको. ये margin of error होगा ही होगा. मैंने सोर्स दे रखा है, आप सोर्स पे भी जाके रेफर कर सकते हो. तो ये जो मैं मैप्स अपलोड करवाऊंगा, जो इससे अर्लियर मैप्स हैं, दे आर मोर ऑथेंटिक. These are not as authentic, but they will give you a very good idea that how things developed as time progressed, right? So अभी तक हमने ये डिस्कस करा है गुप्ता एम्पायर एंड वाक्टकस. Okay? Next very important theme which I am going to, any doubts by the way till now? कुछ भी कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो, any of the aspects of ancient history? Anyway, so the next theme is, which is very important, is Harshvardhan. Harshvardhan ruled from 606 to 647 AD. He is often called the last great Hindu ruler of North India. Anyways, so we know a lot about Harshvardhan and his empire. So in last class I told you that Guptas were succeeded by many smaller feudatories. One of those feudatories were Pushyabhutis of Thanesar. Thanesar which is in Haryana. So ये लिखा था हमने last class में discuss किया था कि एक successors हैं, these are Pushyabhutis of Thanesar, one of the feudatories of Guptas. But these Pushyabhutis became very powerful in time, right? And one of the dynasty which is called Vardhan dynasty, Harshvardhan. So one of the dynasty, it became very powerful, and this is a very interesting stories behind it. So Pushyabhutis, they were not very powerful. Vardhan dynasty was not very powerful before Harsha. What happened is that there is another kingdom which emerged in Bengal, which is called Gauda kingdom. So Gauda kingdom had a king called Shashank. Shashank is again a great king. So Shashank ruled over what now will be considered Bengal, जो अभी modern Bengal है, as well as some parts of Bihar. So Shashank ruled over this region. Now the sister of Harshvardhan, she was married to one of the kings, Vallabhi kings, who ruled Gujarat. In a conflict between Gaudas and Vallabhis, the brother-in-law of Harshvardhan was killed by Shashank, and his sister was kidnapped. So Harshvardhan elder brother, whose name is Rajyavardhan, he goes to a conflict with Shashank, but he is killed. And then Harsh becomes king of Thanesar at the age of 16 years old. And he takes help from other kingdoms. For example, he takes help from Kamrup, which is Assam. Very important kingdom. He takes help of Kamrup and he defeats Shashank. However, Gauda kingdom still existed even after this defeat. So Shashank, and after that, Harsh also emerged victorious over Kannauj. So apart from Thanesar, Kannauj became the capital of Harshvardhan. And from here he consolidated his rule over the entire northern India. Shashank, when Shashank later dies, Harsh also goes and occupies Bihar, Bengal, जो पूरा region है. All this region became part of Harshvardhan. So at its zenith, let me show you the empire of Harshvardhan. So his capital became Kannauj, even though it started from Thanesar. His capital became Kannauj, and almost entire northern India, except part of Rajasthan which was ruled by Hunas as well as other foreigners, except Kashmir, Rajasthan, almost entire northern India became part of हर्षवर्धन किंगडम. यहाँ पे जो फ्यूडलिज्म अभी तक हमने डिस्कस करा था कि फ्यूडलिज्म इट स्टार्टेड एज अ सिस्टम एज पार्ट ऑफ गुप्ताज एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, हियर इट वाज वेल डेवलप्ड. So Harshvardhan did not rule over this entire region directly. However, he had feudal lords who were given lot of land grants. Now we know a lot about Harshvardhan and his rule from two sources. First, from his court poet itself. There is a very famous book called Harsh Charitra written by Ban Bhatt, who was court poet of Harsh. Another very important source is that another Chinese traveler, his name was initially Huan Sang, now we have more accuracy in his name. His name is Xuanzang. So Xuanzang came to India during Harsha's period. He stayed here in India for few years, and he write an elaborate account of administration as well as about society. So these are the two main sources where we deconstruct the idea about Harsha's kingdom. ये जो मैंने पिक्चर डाल रखा है, this is in fact very interesting because only king where he used a personal autograph. This actually means Sahasto Mama Harshvardhan. I am forgetting ये क्या है. So basically this is written in Sanskrit. So this is Harshvardhan personal signature. जो personal एक जो नहीं होते कि यहाँ sign जो है. So that is found, and perhaps the only example of any king from ancient India जो आपको मिलेगा. So anyways, we know a lot of details about Harshvardhan. So after defeating Bihar, Bengal, after defeating Gauda kingdom, he consolidated his rule. जो सबसे दो important theme हमको याद रखना है हर्षवर्धन के केस में, that he now tried to occupy southern part of the India, but he was stopped at the river Narmada by a great king named Pulkeshin, who was a Chalukya's king. I will talk about Chalukyas in detail. But he was defeated by Pulkeshin, and after that Harsha did not participate in any more war. This was the last war he fought. He was defeated by Pulkeshin, and after that he, again very similar to Ashoka, started patronizing Buddhism, especially Mahayana form of Buddhism. So he became a great patron of Buddhism. So he was a Hindu king, but he became a great patron of Buddhism in his later part of life. And after that, whatever we know about his administration and his patronage to Buddhism, we find it from the writings of Xuanzang. Right? So for example, there is a very famous story that when Harsha started patronizing Buddhism, a lot of Brahmins felt jealous of him as well as of Xuanzang, and because Xuanzang was given a lot of a very high prestige in his administration. So in one of the assembly where Harsha had invited everyone as part of a religious congregation, there was an assassination attempt first on Xuanzang, but then Harsha announced that anyone who tries to do that will be beheaded. So even Harsha, there is an attempt on assassination on Harsha himself. So we also find, there is also this mention that Harsha then punishes a lot of Brahmins, that how dare they attack the king himself. And later he again organizes another assembly, right, with more security measures. So even though he patronized Mahayana Buddhism, there are evidences that he also inflicted severe crimes for punishment. However, those crimes became more, they were not, so for example, one of the punishment for theft or for robbery was chopping off your right hand. But this was further mellowed down because of this influence of Buddhism. So anyway, just write down few things here. I will not teach about Buddhism and Jainism. That will be discussed in art and culture classes. Shruti has a question about Jainism and Buddhism. So that will be taught in art and culture classes. Harshvardhan, Harsh belonged to, write down, Harsh belonged to Vardhan dynasty, Vardhan dynasty, Vardhan dynasty, who ruled over Thanesar, Haryana. Who ruled over Thanesar, which right now will be part of Haryana. We know about his kingdom, write down, we know about his kingdom. We know about his kingdom mainly from two sources. Mainly from two sources. Chinese traveler Xuanzang. Chinese traveler Xuanzang. Xuanzang, initially we knew him as Huansang. Xuanzang wrote a detailed account of his kingdom. Wrote a detailed account of his kingdom. And from Harsh Charitra, written by his court poet Pan Bhatt. He became king at the age of 16. He became king at the age of 16. He became king at the age of 16. He acquired Kannauj. He acquired Kannauj and moved his capital to Kannauj itself. He was able to unite many small kingdoms. He was able to unite many small kingdoms which emerged after the decline of Gupta's empire. He was able to unite many small kingdoms which emerged after the decline of Gupta empire. In 618 AD, in 618 AD, he planned to conquer southern India. Southern India. However, was defeated by Chalukya king Pulkeshin II. Chalukya king Pulkeshin II. Thus his empire extended, thus the empire of Harsh extended till the river Narmada. Extended till the river Narmada. Write down few more bullet points. He was a great patron of arts. He was a great patron of arts, with an accomplished writer himself, with an accomplished writer himself. He was a great patron of art, with an accomplished writer himself. In fact, there are 3 books. अब ये भी बड़ा important है कि एक historical, जैसे for example, there are 3 books which is often credited that Harsha wrote these 3 books, Ratnavali, Priyadarshika and Naganand. अब इसमें होगा ये कि lot of times court poets wrote the books. King may have contributed few paragraphs, few things, but often it was attributed to the king himself. So we do not know exactly if the entire book was written by Harsha, but we can take a guess that at least some part of the book was compiled by him, was written by him, and significant part was contributed by his court poet. But अगर एग्जाम में आता है तो हम मानेंगे कि ये हर्ष ने लिखा है. So आप लिख सकते हो, he wrote 3 works in Sanskrit. He wrote 3 works in Sanskrit. Ratnavali, Priyadarshika, and Naganand. He also provided a large sum of money to the Nalanda University. And the last 2 lines लिख लेना, just write down. Harsha's reign marked the beginning of feudalism in India. In fact, because of his control over feudatory chiefs, he was able to rule over a significant part of the land. He was able to rule over this significant part of the land. And एक last point लिख लेना, even though he was a Hindu king, he became a great patron of Mahayana Buddhism. The last great ruler of North India in ancient India, हर्षवर्धन. तो in fact जो हर्षवर्धन के बाद जो next emergence होगा Northern India में, that will happen in medieval period with the advent of Islam into India, right? Anyways, so I will shift my focus now to southern part of the country. What is happening in southern part? But let's take a break here. After the break, we will resume the class. Hello. Hello. This map here represents the Pallavan territory about 645 AD when it was ruled by the greatest king of Pallavan Empire. His name is Narasimhavarman. So Pallavas, as the emergence of Pallava kingdom, it is known for 2-3 things. एक जो एक बहुत important theme है वो आपका art and culture में detail में discuss करेंगे. That Pallavas, their contribution to architecture, जो Dravidian architecture हम पढ़ते हैं. For example, I have talked about this in past also. We mainly talk about Nagar style, Dravid style and Vesara style. तो जो Dravidian style of architecture है, that started with Pallavas. That is a very very important. In fact, जो शो Mamallapuram जो पूरा region है near Kanchi, that is part of UNESCO World Heritage Site, known for their great temples. And in fact, Pallavas architecture also developed in stages. You'll find, so the art and culture, especially the architectural aspect, that will be discussed in detail in your art and culture classes. Here I'm going to tell you mainly about the political development, what was happening. So who were Pallavas first of all? That is the most important question. Who were Pallavas? That is a question which does not have any clear answer. That what is the origin story of Pallavas? For example, we do find the mention of Pallavas even as early as 2nd, 3rd century. And they ruled till 9th century. But they only emerged as one of the great powers in southern India in about 6th and 7th century. And whenever we read about Pallavas, we also read about Chalukyas, because Pallavas and Chalukyas, they were often in struggle against this region here. ये जो कृष्णा तुंगभद्रा region है यहाँ पे. In fact, this Krishna Tungabhadra region will also become very important when we'll discuss medieval India. जब हम विजयनगर और बहमानीस पढ़ेंगे हम. तो ये जो region है, this was also a region of conflict in medieval India. The same region, Krishna Tungabhadra region. ये जो पूरा दोआब है, very fertile region. Right. So this also becomes very important as the source of conflict between Vijayanagar Empire and Bahmanis kingdom. But here, whenever we discuss Pallavas, Chalukyas mainly ruled over this region, जो अभी modern Karnataka होगा. And Pallavas ruled over what will be modern Tamil Nadu as well as some part of Andhra Pradesh. Right. So Pallavas, first thing, their origin, that is not very clear. For example, there is one theory that they were feudatories of Satavahanas. There is another theory that they were Parthians, Indo-Parthians. There is another theory that there were some tribes which became Vedicized, who became Vedicized and adopted Vedic culture. So we do not have exact answer the starting of Pallavas empire. However, we do know few things. For example, we do know that with the emergence of Pallavas, the Vedic culture, the significance of Vedic culture, which already was present during Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas, we have talked about this. But this process got completed. कि जो Aryan या Vedic culture है, so especially this emergence of Brahmanism and Brahmins as the most supreme social class, that is completed during Pallavas period. Pallavas period also marks, so for example, what we have seen in case of Satavahanas, that lands were given to Brahmins. Now this also was continued on a much larger scale, which is called Brahmadeyas. There is a term for it called Brahmadeya. Brahmadeya is land which was given to Brahmins. This land was often tax-free. Lot of land which was not part of agriculture, virgin land, that was also given to Brahmins. So more and more land became part of agriculture because of Brahmadeyas. A very important theme, right? Another very important theme is that Pallavas, because they were in conflict over Krishna Tungabhadra, ये जो दोआब region है, with Chalukyas. So one of the great kings of Pallavas was Mahendravarman. We have talked about Pulkeshin II. Pulkeshin II defeated Harsh. Pulkeshin II is the greatest king of Chalukyan dynasty. He also defeated Mahendravarman. In fact, his army went as deep inside as Kanchi itself. Kanchi was the capital of Pallavan territory. However, he tried to do this thing again and he was defeated. And later he was in fact killed by the son of Mahendravarman, who is Narasimhavarman I. And जो Chalukyas का capital है, that is a region called Vatapi. उनको हम बादामी चालुक्यास बोलते हैं. So Narasimha Varman, after defeating Pulkeshin II, took the title of Vatapi Konda, that one who has emerged victorious over Vatapi. तो यहाँ पे हमको society और economy for example yes, trade played a very important role, that is there, but we have, in terms of society, we do know that Vedic culture, Vedic religion is the most important form of religion. Same thing which we have discussed in earlier, for example, Varna system is present here also, but not to the same extent what was there in the northern India. Right. In fact, Brahmins here are more important than Kshatriyas. Lot of rulers claimed themselves to be Brahmins, from Satavahanas, Vaktakas also. Lot of Pallavas patronized Brahmanism, but they also patronized Jainism. Right. So there is some difference. However, political development हमारा clear होना चाहिए. So we should have, because here things will become now muddy. Lot of kingdoms from different part of the country. अभी तक ऐसे था. We have talked about kingdoms which ruled over a significant part of the Indian territory. Now a lot of kingdoms will emerge. For example, this is Pallavas. Pallavas and Chalukyas, their rivalry is very important. So this map here represents the Chalukyan kingdom. Especially the early Chalukyas, they were also called Badami, Chalukyas of Badami. So when we use the word Chalukya, it actually means three kingdoms which were related to each other. So these are early Chalukyas, or also called Chalukyas of Badami. Now in this conflict between Pallavas and Chalukyas, finally Chalukyas emerged victorious. Kanchi was completely destroyed by the son of Narasimha Varman, who took the title of again Vikramaditya. This title of Vikramaditya is a very bada important title. So he took the title of Vikramaditya. He defeats, not only defeats, but completely destroys the Pallavas empire. However, the significance of Pallavas as a kingdom, that again I cannot emphasize it enough that this is a very very important theme for your art and culture classes. ये art and culture class में बहुत ही एक important जो architecture हम पढ़ते हैं, Dravidian architecture, it starts with Pallavas. Anyways, so Chalukyas, their greatest king Pulkeshin II. So Chalukyas emerged victorious, but this victory is also short-lived because they were replaced by their own feudatories who were called Rashtrakutas. This map here represents the Rashtrakuta dynasty which ruled from 8th to 9th century. Again, a significant part of Deccan area, but not only Deccan area, also part of northern territory as far as Kannauj. You can see that Kannauj, which was capital of Harsh. So as far as Kannauj, but as well as included the entire Pallavan territory. There is a small kingdom here, Pandyan kingdom, that is there. So ये जो struggle between Pallavas and Chalukyas है, वहाँ पे there is a third party also, which are Pandyas of Madurai. But they are a smaller party of this struggle. Anyways, so Rashtrakuta emerged as the most important dynasty in the 8th, 9th century. It ruled for more than 200 years, not only Deccan area, but in fact some parts of northern territory also and southern territory also. This map here represents, so I am now going to talk about another very important theme which is called tripartite struggle. तो यहाँ पे political development ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है. So how politics, for example, I am going to talk about few important kings. I am going to talk about few important struggles. So for example, this map here represents Gujarat Pratiharas, who played a very important role during medieval period also. But Pratiharas ruled over a significant part of northern territory around again 9th century. Right, and another very important kingdom which emerged in Bihar, Bengal region as well as ruled over part of Uttar Pradesh is Pala Empire. Right. If you look at this empire, you will find that there is an overlap here. And that overlap is represented in this map, which is called Kannauj Triangle. That these three empires, Rashtrakutas, Pratiharas and Palas, they fought over this region, Kannauj region. Right, so Patliputra had declined, Kannauj has emerged as the most important territory, mainly because of fertility as well as the fact that it is part of central India. It gives you a very good access to all part of Indian territory. So this struggle is called tripartite struggle. It went on for very long. Ultimately Pratiharas emerged victorious. So Kannauj was ruled by Palas for some time. Rashtrakutas emerged as the most important kingdom. they ruled over Kannauj for a significant duration, but when they were weakened, finally Pratiharas emerged victorious. So the ultimate goal, this struggle which went on for more than 100 years, finally Pratiharas emerged victorious. तो ये 4-5 जो small and एक last where I will end the discussion of ancient history class, that is imperial Cholas. So after the decline of Pallavas, Chola dynasty, we have already talked about Cholas in early, हमने past में discuss करा हुआ है. But to distinguish Cholas, early Cholas from later Cholas, we use a term called imperial Cholas. Now this map here represents Cholas territory in India. They also in fact acquired almost entire Sri Lanka except the southernmost part. The entire Sri Lanka was part of Cholas territory. But not only this, in fact this map here represents the significance of Cholas empire, that they had influence in around Odisha, in some region of Bengal also, right? Because their navy was very powerful. So the pura western coast hai, that was under their influence. But not only that, it also went up to Southeast Asia, right? So Cambodia, Vietnam, any question? So Southeast Asia, this entire region became part of imperial Cholas. तो यहाँ पे हमारा जो discussion on ancient history है वो खत्म होगा. So I will repeat. I told you in the first class that how do you remember all these important names. तो इसका एक simple सा तरीका है कि you try to find commonalities. You try to remember things in themes rather than reading it linearly or rather than reading it की time period की इस साल में ये हुआ था. हम contemporary चीजें हम देखेंगे. For example, we will first discuss about what is happening. Pallavas and Chalukyas, they are fighting, right? Then Chalukyas, Pallavas are defeated, but Chalukyas are also defeated by one of their own feudatories who are Rashtrakutas. Now Rashtrakutas, Palas and Pratiharas are fighting over Kannauj, which is part of tripartite struggle. Finally, Pratiharas emerged as the most important ruler, who in fact played also a significant role in the medieval India, while in southern part of country, almost entire southern part of the country, that was ruled by imperial Cholas, some of the great kings, and again development in architecture काफी amazing है. ठीक है? जो Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas हैं, they are also very very important for another style of architecture which is called Vesara style of architecture. Right? So I have talked about 3 architectural style: Nagar style, Dravid style which started by Pallavas, but it reached its zenith during Cholas. And third is Vesara style which has mixture of both Nagar style as well as Dravid style, and it has its own some unique features of its own. आर्ट एंड कल्चर क्लासेस में डिटेल में कराएंगे. तो जो वेसरा स्टाइल हम पढ़ते हैं, यहाँ पे 3 इंपॉर्टेंट नेम्स हैं जो हमको याद रखना है. फर्स्ट इज चालुक्यस, सेकेंड इज राष्ट्रकूटस, एंड थर्ड इज होयसालास, which we will discuss in medieval history. Hoysala also ruled over the region of Karnataka. So this Vesara style of architecture developed in this region. So this Deccan region in fact have always played a role as a connection between northern and southern India, right? So ये Deccan region has played a very very important role in the political development of ancient India as well as medieval India from the starting, from the Satavahanas itself. Right, even before Satavahanas, even during Mauryas, this region played a very important role. तो यहाँ पे हमारा जो discussion on ancient history है वो खत्म होता है. ठीक है? So write down few things here, but this discussion I will continue here in the next class. I think ये आज तो खत्म कहीं से नहीं होगा. हम next, because imperial Cholas के बारे में we have lot of idea about their society, their economy. So I'm not going to discuss again the art and culture aspect, but जो society और economy aspect है वो हमको बहुत ज़्यादा detail में पता है. Especially imperial Cholas are known for their experiments in local administration, जो पंचायत system हम बोलते हैं. Their local administration was very well developed. What was started as part of Gupta's empire, again in ancient India, again it is not part of ancient India frankly. जो imperial Cholas हैं, they are not part of ancient India. They are called as part of early medieval India. So this system of local administration reached its zenith during this time. So what I want you to do is that I'm going to give you few names. You do not have to know all the important names. I'm going to give you few names and try to correlate that while they were ruling this part of the territory, what is happening in other part of the country. When you try to remember things in this way, ancient India will become very easier, right? I will repeat. पॉलिटिकल डेवलपमेंट, सोशल डेवलपमेंट, इकोनॉमी डेवलपमेंट, इसको भी मैंने डिटेल में बताया है कि पॉलिटिक्स में हम क्या पढ़ेंगे. इंपॉर्टेंट डायनेस्टीज, इंपॉर्टेंट रूलर्स, इंपॉर्टेंट वॉर्स, दीज आर द थ्री थिंग्स. इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट, व्हाट टाइप ऑफ इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी. इफ एग्रीकल्चर, व्हाट टाइप ऑफ क्रॉप्स. इफ ट्रेड, what type of goods are being imported or exported. If different type of activity, economic activity, then what are those economic activities, right? Society, how is the social differentiation, right? Who are the ruling class, what is the status of women, and cultural history, art and culture का important part है, but एक बहुत important theme यहाँ पे ये रहता है, which I think I have talked about in the previous classes, but if I have not, this is again a very very important theme, that you also need to remember few names who are not kings, but they are, say for example, great poets, or they are great spiritual leaders, great artists, right? In which area, in which decade or in which century they were active in, and who patronized them. That is again a very very important theme. अगर इतनी चीजें आपकी क्लियर हैं तो एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री के और मिडिवल हिस्ट्री के क्वेश्चंस गलत नहीं होंगे, ठीक है? तो रादर देन ट्राइंग टू मग अप थिंग्स इन अ लीनियर वे विथ टाइम पीरियड वाइज, दैट इज नॉट गोइंग टू हेल्प यू, बिकॉज आप नहीं याद रख पाओगे. देयर इज अ लिमिटेशन टू हाउ मच यू कैन मग अप, बट इफ यू ट्राई टू कोरिलेट थिंग्स विथ ईच अदर, देन आपका जो माइंड है वो ज्यादा अच्छे से ज्यादा लंबे समय तक याद रख पाएगा. सो जस्ट राइट डाउन फ्यू थिंग्स हियर. पल्लवास, गिव दिस हेडिंग पल्लवास. I will not give you a time period, however, I should tell you that they were active from 6th to 9th century. Very active. So they reached their zenith in 7th century. But I should also tell you that just because I am mentioning here 6th century does not mean that Pallavas were not part of earlier history. We simply do not have enough information about their origin. So in fact, that can be your starting point. There are many theories behind the origin of Pallavas. There are many theories behind origin of Pallavas. However, none can be confirmed. None can be confirmed. By 7th century, write down, by 7th century, the southern India was being ruled by three great kingdoms, Pallava of Kanchipuram, Chalukyas of Badami, and Pandyas of Madurai. Sorry. Pallavas and Chalukyas, write down. Pallavas and Chalukyas fought many battles over the supremacy of Krishna Tungabhadra Doab. Krishna Tungabhadra Doab. capital, right on next bullet point, the capital of Pallavas, the capital of Pallavas was Kanchipuram, Kanchipuram, and at their zenith, zenith means peak, at their zenith, the empire extended from northern part of Andhra Pradesh to river Kaveri in south. They were great patron of art. And started constructing grand temples. In Dravidian style. Right on next bullet point. Mahendra Varman, he ruled from about 600 to 630 AD. Was one of the great kings who introduced rock-cut temple architecture. However, he was defeated by Pulkeshin II. We have talked about Pulkeshin. He was defeated by Pulkeshin II of Chalukya dynasty. Right on. Narasimha Varman, he ruled from 630 to 668 AD. Narasimha Varman, who is considered as the greatest of Pallava kings. Defeated Pulkeshin, who was killed in the battle. Pulkeshin II, of course, I'm talking about Pulkeshin II. Pulkeshin, who was killed in the battle in 642 AD. After this victory, he took control of Chalukya capital Vatapi. And assumed the title of Vatapi Konda. assumed the title of Vatapi Konda. He founded the city of Mamallapuram. He founded the city of Mamallapuram, which is known for great temples. Known for great temples. Xuanzang, या Xuanzang लिख लो because we now know him as Xuanzang. Xuanzang visited his kingdom. Xuanzang visited his kingdom in about 640 AD. In about 640 AD. Write on next bullet point. Pallavas patronized Brahmins. Pallavas patronized Brahmins who received land and villages. Called Brahmadeya. Called Brahmadeya. They mainly worshipped Shiva and Vishnu. They mainly worshipped Shiva and Vishnu, but were also tolerant of Buddhism and Jainism. Kanchi University became a center of great learning. During this period. Sanskrit was the main language. However, Tamil was spoken by most of the people. एक लास्ट थीम जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, which again will be discussed in art and culture classes in detail, is that start of Bhakti movement. So start of Bhakti movement that happened in Tamil Nadu, right? That happened in Tamil Nadu with Alvars and Nanners. Alvars were worshippers of Vishnu, Nanners were worshippers of Shiva, right? So Alvars and Nanners who emerged in Tamil Nadu, they coincided with Pallavan rule. तो ये भी एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट थीम. Alvars and Nanners and their important saints and their important work you will be बहुत डिटेल में आपको पढ़ाएंगे आर्ट एंड कल्चर क्लासेस में. सो वहां पे यू विल गेट टू नो लॉट ऑफ डिटेल्स, बट दिस इज ऑल्सो यू शुड नो. सो एक लाइन में आप लिख सकते हो, Alvars अब ब्रैकेट में लिख लेना, worshippers of Vishnu and Nanners worshippers of Shiva, worshippers of Shiva, emerged during 6th and 7th century. 6th and 7th century, which were part of Pallava's kingdom. Part of Pallava's kingdom. एक लास्ट लिख लेना यहाँ पे. The land of territory was divided mainly into 3 categories. Land of the territory was mainly divided into 3 categories. First is Ur. Here peasants lived, right down here. Here peasants lived and tax was collected by village headmen. Tax was collected by village headmen. Sabha. This land was granted to Brahmins. This land was granted to Brahmins, which was also called Agrahar villages. These were part of Brahmadeyas. ये जो villages हैं, they were called Agrahar villages, part of Brahmadeya. And last, Nagaram. Nagaram. Here mainly traders and merchants resided. देखो पल्लवास का ना एक सबसे जो इम्पोर्टेंट कंट्रीब्यूशन टू आर्किटेक्चर है कि अभी तक जो भी टेम्पल्स थे दे वेयर कॉल्ड रॉक कट आर्किटेक्चर. दैट रॉक्स वेयर कट एंड गिवन दिस and temples were made, but this grand freestanding temple that was started by Pallavas. Anyways, so remember this theme for your art and culture classes, because ये art and culture में डिटेल में आपको art जो important temples हैं, जो important types of architectural, so even Pallava style also developed in 3 or 4 phases. In fact, it started as rock cut architecture, then freestanding temples developed. Even in this freestanding developed temples you find different types of development, जो कि art and culture का एक important theme होगा. Give the next heading Chalukyas. I must tell you the Chalukyas I am going to talk about. So Chalukyas जो है, they are further divided mainly into 3 parts. The first, which we just talked about, Chalukyas of Badami. तो ये जो whatever I am going to discuss here is limited to Chalukyas of Badami. However, Chalukyas continued ruling till 12th century. They reached their zenith during Chalukyas of Badami itself. So Badami is, which is right now, for example, अभी जो कर्नाटका में होगा, right? So यहाँ पे मेरा जो फोकस है यहीं तक है. So that continued till 8th century. After that they were replaced by Rashtrakutas. However, we find different Chalukyas who are related to the early Chalukyas which ruled till 12th century. तो आप in fact लिख सकते हो Chalukyas ruled part of South India. Chalukyas ruled part of South India. from 6th to 12th century, from 6th to 12th century, however, they are divided into three distinct but related dynasties. Three distinct but related dynasties. Chalukyas of Badami. First, Chalukyas of Badami. Chalukyas of Badami. एक लाइन इसमें लिख लेना. Their capital was Badami. Their capital was Badami. However, it was known as Vatapi at that point of time. Their capital was Badami. However, they declined. However, they declined after death of Pulkeshin II. After death of Pulkeshin II. Chalukyas of Vengi या ईस्टर्न चालुक्याज इनको बहुत बार बोलते हैं. Chalukyas of Vengi. Vengi is a city in Tamil Nadu. This became their later capital. Chalukyas of Vengi. इसमें एक लाइन लिखना. They are also called Eastern Chalukyas. They are also called Eastern Chalukyas with their capital at Vengi. With their capital at Vengi. And Chalukyas of, or इनको Western Chalukyas, sorry, simply say Western Chalukyas. They emerged in late 10th century. They emerged in late 10th century. Emerged in late 10th century and ruled from Kalyani. Kalyani, modern day Baswa Kalyan करके एक place है in Karnataka. In fact, that is the starting of another very important philosophy called Lingayat philosophy. So Lingayat, so I have talked about Alvars and Nanners, which emerged as the Bhakti movement in Tamil Nadu. But another strand of Bhakti movement which emerged in Karnataka, which challenged the Brahmanical authority, is Lingayats. तो ये जो कल्याण जो मैं प्लेस बता रहा हूँ, दिस कल्याण इन फैक्ट इज द स्टार्टिंग, इज द इमर्जेंस ऑफ लिंगायत मूवमेंट स्टार्टेड बाय बासवा हिमसेल्फ. तो अगेन दैट विल बी डिस्कस्ड इन आर्ट एंड कल्चर क्लासेस. बट रिमेंबर दिस थीम इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. राइट डाउन द ग्रेटेस्ट किंग, राइट डाउन इन नेक्स्ट बुलेट पॉइंट. द ग्रेटेस्ट किंग ऑफ बादामी चालुक्यास of Badami Chalukyas was Pulkeshin II. He ruled from 609 to 642 AD. Pulkeshin II. His birth name was Iraya. His birth name was Iraya. Who defeated both Pallavas and Harsha. who defeated both Pallavas and Harsha. Information about him is obtained from Aihole inscription. Is obtained from Aihole inscription. Aihole inscription, which was written by his court poet. Ravikriti. Court poet Ravikriti. Aihole inscription is part of Karnataka, modern day Karnataka mein. Aihole in fact is very famously called cradle of Indian architecture because you find so much architectural development part of Aihole. We already have discussed that Xuanzang visited his kingdom, right? So I'm not going to repeat that. Right on next bullet point. Chalukyas had a great maritime power and a well-organized army. Chalukyas had great maritime power and well-organized army. They patronized Sanskrit. However, Telugu and Kannada literature flourished during their period. Telugu and Kannada literature flourished during their period. Great temples were erected, write down. Great temples were erected in Vesara style of architecture. Vesara style of architecture. Which has features of both Nagar and Dravid style. Which has features of both Nagar and Dravid style. Features of both Nagar and Dravid style. तो बादामी में जब पतदकल में, अगेन पतदकल इज पार्ट ऑफ यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट. ये जो यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट है एक बार जाके लिस्ट देख लेना, स्पेशली जो कल्चरल हेरिटेज साइट्स हैं. सो बोथ बादामी एंड पतदकल, ग्रेट टेम्पल्स, राइट. गिव द नेक्स्ट हेडिंग. लास्ट थीम आई एम गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट. I feel like आप बहुत देर से आप लिख ही रहे हो, राइट. सो लास्ट थीम आई एम गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट इन टूडेज क्लास बिकॉज वी हैव, I think एक क्लास और चाहिए होगा where we will talk about Rashtrakutas, tripartite struggle, mainly Rashtrakutas, Pratiharas and Palas, and then the final topic we are going to discuss is Cholas. However, there are some miscellaneous, there is one topic which I think I have not talked about, वो miss हो गया, is pottery tradition. Again, pottery tradition for Vedic phase, for Vedic and Mauryan phase, कि how पॉटरी ट्रेडिशन से हमको काफी कुछ पता चलता है एंशिएंट इंडिया के बारे में. तो एक वो थीम रह गया जो कि हम लास्ट क्लास में करेंगे, राइट. तो एक लास्ट थीम आज के क्लास में, आफ्टर दैट आई एम गोइंग टू एंड दिस क्लास, इज अ वेरी फेमस रिवोल्ट विच अकर्ड इन 6th century कॉल्ड कालभर रिवोल्ट. किसी ने बाहुबली मूवी देखी है, राइट. तो बाहुबली मूवी में जो बैटल होता है, द बैटल वेयर भल्लाल एंड बाहुबली, दे फाइट दिस ट्राइबल इन्वेजन. So a lot of people were actually finding correlation with this tribal invasion from Kalbhar revolt. Anyways, that is only, Bahubali movie was criticized ऑन आई डोंट नो, बहुत सारे लोग रैंडम चीजों पे ऑफेंड होते हैं, मुझे समझ नहीं आता, इतनी अमेजिंग मूवी थी यार, राइट. इट वाज सच अ ग्रैंड मूवी, बट रैंडम आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू डिस्कस बिकॉज दोज आर्गुमेंट्स हु वर क्रिटिसाइजिंग बाहुबली, दे आर नॉट इवन वर्थ कंसिडरेशन. But a lot of people were finding parallels with this Kalbhar revolt. So Kalbhar revolt, Kalbhars were basically a tribe who did not like this granting of land, and especially land who they thought belonged to them. So a lot of tribal lands which was not part of agriculture, that became part of Brahmadeyas, by Chalukyas also, by Pallavas also, by Pandyas also, right? ये Brahmadeya जो है, so they started revolting against it, and this revolt went on for few years, right? Finally, when all these three kingdoms came together, this revolt was crushed. It was not crushed by one kingdom. Chalukyas, Pallavas and Pandyas, who were, by the way, they themselves were fighting for supremacy, but to crush this revolt they had to come together, right? तो एक last एक theme है, just awareness is more than sufficient. Right on here. The Kalvars were tribes. The Kalvars were tribes. Were tribes who were protesting. Who were protesting against the. Who were protesting against the numerous land grants, who were protesting against the numerous land grants to Brahmins, made by three dynasties, to Brahmins made by three dynasties, Pallavas, Chalukyas and Pandyas. Pallavas, Chalukyas and Pandyas. This was crushed. This uprising was crushed jointly by these three kingdoms. Jointly by these three kingdoms. So by the way, this uprising happened in 6th century, right? Pinpointing will be very, एक साल pinpoint करना बहुत मुश्किल है, but this uprising happened in 6th century. ठीक है? So I know I have some time, but ठीक है, आज का क्लास रहने देते हैं यहाँ पे. In next class, I'm going to continue this discussion of very important struggle which is called tripartite struggle. I'm going to talk about three kingdoms, Rashtrakutas, Pratiharas and Palas, and then I'm going to talk about जो एक important, बहुत important topic है वो imperial cholas है, and last एक कुछ miscellaneous topic है उसके बाद. I think एक class में हो जाना चाहिए. So I will see you guys in the next class.